Hey everyone, welcome in to another daily editorial here on the KE Report. We're chatting with Erik Wetterling. We're going to be talking about three companies, all with news out today. We're going to talk Ramp Metals, BCM Resources, one that we haven't touched on before, and Goliath Resources. Starting off with Ramp Metals, follow-up holes from the discovery hole that got a lot of people's attention just a couple weeks ago. Ramp is traded on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol RAMP. We had more results from that first discovery hole, that Ranger 1 hole, as well as some results at another target, the Rogue target. Not the high grade, not even close to the high grade that we saw in that initial Ranger hole. That initial Ranger hole that caught everyone's attention was 7.5 meters of 73.5 grams per ton gold. This is all at the Rottenstone Southwest property in Saskatchewan. Erik, what did you think of these follow-up results out of Ramp?
I think this is a very unique story because, they were mainly looking for nickel and then they get this bonanza zone back at Ranger and they only drilled one hole. And it's like, statistically, this is highly anomalous. Most or a lot of projects you can drill whatever 10,000 meters and you won't get a result like this. And it's interesting to look at the market reaction, for example, because it first went up, I think, several hundreds of percent. Then we got the 7.5 meter bonanza announced, and then it's down today. Last I checked, down 40% on these results. So it's like, as always, there's a lot of short-term expectations and psychology, whatever, in play. But I find this news release quite intriguing because, okay, they didn't know what they were going to hit further down hole. One would hope that the bonanza zone, for example, would be extended, but it looks like, okay, what they reported was the bonanza zone in that hole at least. But further down the hole, they hit 5 meters of 4.17 grams per ton. That's not too bad. That's a 20 grammer. So obviously that looks like, I don't know, another load, for example. And then even further down at 3, well, it's not that much further down actually, but they hit 3 meters of 1.81 grams per ton gold. So there seems to be at least two zones, let's say, where there's like bonanza and high grade gold. So I think this is very much a live story because they have one hole. Again, it's like, if you look at the Kennerland study, for example, it's like if you hit results like this and you drill 10,000 meters, this would be significant. If you drill one hole and get these results, that's like, again, on a statistical basis, there's like, this happens once every blue moon, perhaps. And they had some low grade sniffs at the Rogue target as well. But again, they were, as far as I understand, they were looking for nickel, but they had some gold sniffs at, what was it, like 1.5 meters, 0.6 grams per ton gold. That's not economic, but it's still anomalous, 0.6, and 1 meter, 1.22 in Rogue Hole 3. So that's like 4 kilometers away. So I would say it's like, all I take away from this is that there seems to be maybe a significant amount of gold slushing around up there, and obviously it's hard to kill a story if you with the discovery hole itself. So this is wide open. I don't know, maybe the shares sold off because like everyone assumes that, okay, there's no more assays to come, so the next thing is going to be a placement, for example. But I'm not sure the next usually is going to be a placement. It's like, as far as I understand, they have some money and they might actually just simply relatively immediately follow up on the bonanza hole. And yeah, so it's a live story to me. I have a position that I'm okay with if I lose money on. I just think it's a live, two, very unusual and interesting story.
Erik, when you see a discovery hole like this, again, and we should remind people, this is the first hole into this target. Obviously, we need to see more follow-up holes, and I'm sure the company is going to be expediting whatever funds they do have to try to drill around that Ranger target, that Ranger 1 hole. But to come out of the gates and have something like that is pretty impressive. Of course, the market got very euphoric and then went very depressed today just because the results weren't bonanza grade. But that is impressive to hit a hole like that on the very first hole in a target. What kind of follow-up drilling would keep you in the story, and what kind of follow-up drilling would cause you to say, okay, maybe that was it?
Oh, that's hard. It also depends on what the market cap is going to be, because it's like if they have very impressive follow-up holes and maybe the market cap is 2 times what it is now or 3 times, maybe that's like, oh, this looks to be enough gravy to actually, this could be a pretty impressive growth curve. Or if they come out with pretty good holes, but the market cap is 2-3 times what it is now, then you might be like, oh, okay, maybe the risk reward isn't really there. I mean, I don't have a good answer for that actually, but I just simply want to at least see that this is not a one-off. I mean, of course, it also depends on the step outs. It's like if you drill 5 holes and you step out 10 meters, that's not really proving much. So it depends kind of on their plans. I mean, the more aggressive the step outs, I mean, the less you kind of need to see in a sense. But if they step out again like 5-10 meters, and then you of course want at least something similar to shop in the core, because otherwise, yeah, it's I guess improbable. But yeah, I would say I have no real good answer for that, but I simply want to see the high grade continue. But I'm not expecting that if they do 50-meter step out, that every single hole is going to come back with like 7.5 meters of bonanza, because there's not, you know, which mine runs at 73 grams per ton AU. None that I can come up with. But it's like, I want to see that. I mean, hopefully they'll have some more hits, and hopefully they'll test, let's say, the other potential zones as well. So it's like, hopefully they have more than one high grade lode.
So Erik, let's actually talk about the news that's coming then, because the company does outline the next steps in that news release. Right now, they're working on permitting and an extensive geophysical mapping and sampling program, and then planning to follow up, obviously, on that discovery hole in the fall or the winter. So that is being planned. But then they're also getting further assays to fill in the multi-element gaps from these drill results. So in terms of news flow, it sounds like we'll get follow-up results, but again, more the multi-element results, and then sampling, mapping, that kind of thing before a drill program by the end of the year. Do you worry that this stock could lose a little bit of momentum because they're not necessarily rushing into that follow-up drill program?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if there's something I find hard is predicting short-term stock movement, and most people are short-term orientated. So I mean, that's kind of the way I see it overall with my investing. It's like play the game that others are not playing. So I'm not going to pretend I know where it's going to go in short term. What you may, you know, your case, so maybe there's a lull here or even more of a dip. I mean, I would absolutely not rule that out. But then, of course, that might be an opportunity in itself that, okay, well, it's been boring or is boring, but you know there's going to be some high potential catalysts coming up that are going to get people excited again. So maybe I go and buy the dip or whatever if that happens. It's like I don't try to predict most stock movements. I just react to what the Mr. Market gives me, let's say. So I wouldn't be surprised either way if it dips a bit or anything like that. I just simply think that the target is very much alive, and if it trades down to whatever level that is like, hey, this is pricing in that they have no chance of making a discovery, even though it's like obviously live, yeah, then I will hopefully just buy a bit more, I guess.
Fair enough, Erik. Well, we'll keep following along with it and see what the follow-up drilling yields and what some of the other groundwork is. But let's pivot over to the next company you brought to our attention. This is BCM Resources, trades on the TSX.V under the ticker B. And I had some news out today that they have vectored in on the copper core of what they think is a porphyry Carn copper system. So it looks like this is following up on previous work that they've done as far as exploration, but they now think they found basically the hot center of this thing. So what do you take away from this news put out today from BCM Resources?
Yeah, I think the work they've been doing and the work that's been done at Colorado School of Mines, I mean, it's kind of, now they seem to have a good sense where it's like, okay, if there is something big here, let's say a copper porphyry or a major skarn system, because they've already hit pretty good intercepts in skarn. It's like now they think they know where it is. So I like this kind of, you know, I view it similar a bit to Prisma Metals hot breccia target, where it's like, at least with these exploration cases or high risk, high reward situations, like what's high risk, what's high reward potential as well. but it's easy, again, it's easy to understand. Okay, they might, as per the news release, they think that, okay, maybe 6 drill holes or whatever can properly test this. So, okay, after they drill those 6 holes, for example, they're either going to walk away from the project or they're going to find something of significance that makes them not walk away. Odds are they're not going to find a world-class deposit. We have to assume, we have to be pessimistic because that doesn't happen every day. But at least like what you signed up for. And you can tell it's high risk, high reward because you're going to drill, or they want to drill, I guess, like 6 holes to start with to either kill or fill the boots of the project, so to speak. So no, I just think this is a very interesting case. I think the target is very much legit. It's in Utah, which was, I think, #1 on Fraser's jurisdiction rankings for 2023, which is kind of interesting. And it's copper. It's in the US. So from a macro standpoint, I guess it's very much strategic. So this is one of those cases where it's like, I assume they're not going to find anything. It's just that in case they do, at this market cap, obviously that would be a big thing. And I still think that they need to raise money. So I'm internally debating, should I take pre-discovery as a risk, or should I just buy on a discovery hole and pay up 100% or something? I haven't decided yet. It depends on if I can get into the placement, for example, and what warrant terms I'm provided with. But I would just say, I think it's just one of those, as classic of a high risk, high reward story as it gets. And it's not complicated. They don't have 30,000 hectares to, fine comb with soil samples or whatever. No, just a few expensive holes, and then you'll know.
Erik, this story is an interesting one simply because before the news today, the last news release came out in September of last year. The company's corporate presentation is only up to date until January of this year. Clearly not a whole lot has happened, and this is reinterpreting some past holes. But again, as you said, they need money. So one, you said that you're not necessarily taking that risk, but are you already a shareholder? Does this news just get you to hold further if you are a shareholder?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with it. It's like, when people fear dilution, whatever, it's like, what does it matter at the end of the day? I mean, especially in this sector right now, you have some pre-discovery stores, like legit one. It's like even, let's say, 30-50% dilution here or there. Does it really matter? If they're not going to hit anything, you can kind of assume that, well, 50 to 100% theoretically is the max loss you can take. And again, given where most of these juniors are starting off, if they actually do find something of significance, does it really matter if it's trading for 10, 20, or 30 million? In case they have one of these miracle discoveries and it goes up to $500 to $2 billion. I don't really think it matters that much, because there's no way anybody can be that precise with the risk reward anyway. So I don't know if that answers the question. I would say I think I have some shares. I have some warrants, but it's not a big position, because this is pretty much as high risk, high reward as it gets. Plus, it's like going to be immediate in the sense that it's not going to take 3 years to kill this story, or at least this target. No, the first real campaign is either going to kill or not. And the most probable it's going to get killed. But still, at this market cap, I don't really care that much if I buy more now or later if it's a small position. But I would say it's like, yeah, probably. I mean, sometimes a company makes a discovery and I up my stake with 400%, even after the stock is up 100%. So I'm a bit undecided right now how I want to play it, but I'm certainly going to look into if they do a placement, for example, if I want to look at getting in more pre-discovery.
Well, we'll keep following along with this one too, Erik. It's a swing for the fences, like you say, high risk, high reward, and they're going to put those holes in and know right away whether they're whether they've vectored into this core of the copper porphyry or the skarn system or not. So they can drill it or kill it, and we'll know soon enough. Well, one other one that we want to get to is Goliath Resources. This one is traded on the TSX.V under the ticker GOT, and on the OTC markets under the ticker GOTRF. And Goliath announced today that they have started drilling with 2 rigs. This is at the Sherbet feeder source, following up on prior year's work where they've got those multiple zones, the Sherbet, the Bonanza Shear, and the Golden Gate zone. A lot of people are excited to see what happens at depth when they get down into that Golden Gate feeder zone again this year. And then they also have 3 new targets. One of them is pretty close, like about a kilometer away from the Sherbet zone, and the other 2 are up in the Cambria ice field. So following up on last year's channel sampling. So this is a big program for Goliath. They're doing 15,000 meters to start with. What's your takeaway from the news out today that the drills are on the ground and turning?
Yeah, I mean, I think this has been one of the better gold-silver discovery stories over the last 2 years, let's say. I mean, the Sherbet zone and other zones nearby has proved to be pretty nicely predictable. So I expect, I mean, it's not a long shot to say that I think they're going to be hitting more high-grade hits and all that, because the system appears to be very robust. So I think there's probable growth here, and not only growth. I mean, if they do infilling, it's not growth per se, it's more de-risking of what is potentially there already. But they will also chase this feeder zone, for example, and who knows what can happen there. That might be a big thing. And they're also going to drill test 3 outcropping targets. So I like this mix. So it's like they have enough success. There's like you can kind of get an idea that, hey, they probably have a multi-million ounce gold silver system, but also they're going to be testing like the feeder zone, which could be a big value add, and 3 additional targets. So I am much more or less comfortable having a bigger position in Goliath, for example, than the other 2, because they don't have any margin of safety whatsoever, really. It's like not an inferred resource, even not an inferred resource, even. So, I mean, in this case, there's already a very much intact story, and let's see if this one develops a few Hydra heads that they have even more discoveries. So I like the mix of like probable exploration success or real success sprinkled in with like, let's say, 4 different more grassroots kind of targets, and that are de-risked in one way or another. I mean, obviously, there should be a feeder source, for example. The question is, do they find it, and what's the quality? And the other ones at least have outcropping mineralization, so it's not like they're completely blind, like Sherbet zone in the first place wasn't completely blind. They had outcropping mineralization, and it seems to have corresponded what they actually hit in the drill results. So hopefully they will have 1 or 2 more discoveries after this season, as well as growing and de-risking the Sherbet zone. So this is one I really like. I think, I mean, it's a good mix of, again, probable success with potential success, and just based on what they've already drilled, it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm leaning towards them having economic multi-million ounce deposit at the end of the day.
Well, what's exciting about this, Erik, and it's what you like too, is that like they've made discoveries, but they're still very discovery focused, right? These 3 new targets, plus continuing to expand on their discoveries. When would you expect to see them move past just the discovery focus, though? Do you care about that?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. I mean, I like the idea of, well, I think it's like people buy stocks, let's say, out of comfort, and we pay up out of, let's say, greed or like blue sky potential. So it's obviously, I think, good that you have that kind of carrot dangling almost at all times if it's a discovery story, that, hey, this could get bigger. If you think is, let's say, highly valued at the time, well, you show that, hey, it can grow into it, whatever. So now I'm very much for it that they are doing this aggressive exploration, and I simply think that, I mean, they've staked a lot of ground, etc. So it's like they're very much focused on showing the upside potential, because Lord knows, I mean, it does get boring when you outline the footprint and then you start doing the infill drilling. I mean, that's the top of the first Lassonde curve, let's say. So I don't know. I mean, it depends on what happens, how this story evolves. But like right now, if they find good outcropping targets, go drill them. If they think there's a feeder down there, which they haven't hit yet, go drill them, because it's like low-hanging fruit and big bang for the buck potential. So when they start, I don't know, drilling, if they find a chip sample, for example, just for the sake of it, yeah, maybe they should rein it back a bit and focus on de-risking or infill drilling. But as soon as they keep finding good targets, I say it's like, hey, test it with a few holes. What we saw at Shorebed, it just got better and better.
Well, Erik, I'm curious to get your thoughts on these 3 new targets that Goliath is going after in this drill program. I mean, historically, the Shorebed zone, Bonanza Shear zone, and Golden Gate zone were gold forward targets. There's a lot of good gold hits there. But these 3 new areas that they're going after, based on the channel sampling and trenching the work that they've done, there's a lot more copper in these targets. When you look, for example, at some of the channel sampling they were doing last year at the Jackpot zone, it came back with 7-8% copper along with the Bonanza grade gold. When you look at Treasure Island and Full Contact up in the Cambria ice fields, those targets, the channel samples had 5%, 7%, even 14% copper values. Are you concerned that it dilutes the gold message by having these other targets, or are you excited to have the copper in there just as another metal, another value driver? Because usually copper drilling is a lot deeper and a lot more expensive, but then again, they're kind of spaced away from where the gold zone is. How are you looking at these 3 new targets? They're going to have both copper and gold.
Good question. I mean, I don't think I can pick and choose yet, and it's like I don't think they can either, because they're still learning so much about the system, and who knows, maybe it gets more copper rich towards a potential source or whatever. So it's like you don't know. Let's say this is a very much broken up ground and there's been faults and whatever. So maybe some stuff close to surface is much closer to the source than some other stuff close to surface. So I think it's very much a learning experience for them. And of course, I mean, there's I don't know if it's a saying, but let the rocks tell you what's there, not geology, I was going to say. It's like if you hit high-grade copper, obviously, I think it's warranted to follow up on that, because you don't know where it's going to lead. It's like if your model, whatever, your thesis said, there shouldn't be any copper here, but there's copper there. I mean, at least try to flush it out. But I guess it doesn't mean that, copper is, let's say if copper was hot right now, there's like, bang, we get one hit and just plow everything into that, when you have like, I don't know, 4 even better, perhaps, gold targets. So I don't mind it, but of course it's going to speak to maybe a different audience. That is like, let's say you have a multi-million ounce gold system and half your budget goes to drilling up a copper hit. Yeah, I think that could maybe punish it, because then you would have kind of a, let's say, split interest from shareholders, that some are in for copper and some are in for gold. So it's much easier to tell and stick to one script, let's say. But at the same time, I wouldn't rule out drilling anything that looks interesting, because you never know which kind of ramp metal showed us. It's like you never know what you could find.
Hey, in all fairness, I like this strategy. They have these good drill holes, this gold discovery that they have grown, and these potential copper hits or the copper discoveries. Who knows what they're going to get? They're a long way away from Shorebed. They're 19 kilometers away, 36 kilometers away. So in a way, with how large their land package is, if they start hitting copper up north, hey, there's no saying that they couldn't, in a way, kind of dissect those properties off, or at least they are a story that isn't necessarily clouding the gold discovery either. I think this is very interesting. This will be an interesting program to follow along with this year, because of the fact that, look, they're trying to expand on gold discoveries, and then who knows what they could hit way up north on their project. Erik, thank you as always for your time. Always great chatting with you, and some interesting news for us to cover today. We'll chat with you next week. Who knows what we'll be talking about, but it's always interesting to hear what you're seeing. Thanks for your time, Erik.
Thanks, guys, and consider me biased, assume my own shares of all companies mentioned.